Good evening. Welcome back to another episode of Please Call Me Crazy, brought to you by Free People Radio, powered by our favorite sponsor, TireGet.com. That's TireGet.com. You have to buy tires from somebody, you might as well buy them from us. Help fund the movement, help support the movement. We believe in the freedom of movement, and that's exactly what the establishment wants to take from you now. I'm your host, Royce White, here in the belly of the beast with my trusted co-host, the great Professor Penn, and this is another Hebrews edition. We got to just put the Hebrews channel up. As we've been saying, it's Hebrews. What's today? May 1st. Hebrews channel is going. May 1st is the official release of the Hebrews YouTube channel.
May 1st, isn't that like International Workers' Day or something? May Day. I think that's International Workers' Day.
I don't know.
I think so. I'm looking it up. I think May 1st.
There's too many holidays in this country.
You know what? It's the Workers' Day.
If there's one day that we should probably celebrate, it's the Workers' Day. But isn't there already Labor's Day?
Well, no, I think this is the
International Workers' Day.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's just see here. What does it say? May Day, known internationally as International Workers' Day or Labor Day, is a holiday celebrated by over 60 countries on May 1st to recognize the achievements of workers.
Oh, what a scam.
May 1st, baby. You know what they do in China?
What?
They give the workers a star on the flag instead of a seat at the table. A star on the flag.
Great.
Isn't that cool?
Wow. Useless.
Yeah.
Useless. Today I want to talk about what you've been watching in Belarus first.
Oh.
Can you tell me about Belarus first?
Where's our mainstream media on this one?
Okay.
Let's go a trip down memory lane. Let's go back to, for those of you who are my age or older, you will be able to verify this in the live chat. For the rest of you, this will come as a shock. In 1963, we had a little dust-up with the Russians. That's another thing. They call it the Soviet Union. That's like Batman and the Cape Crusader. It's a cover story, okay? It was the Russians. We had a thing called the Cuban Missile Crisis. And it was discovered that the Russians were putting nuclear-tipped missiles in Cuba, but, 60 miles from Florida. Man, we freaked out. People were glued to their television 24 hours a day. I remember my father went to work one day and he said to my mother, if the attack comes, go down to the caves by the river. I'll find you. I thought, wow, there's going to be a lot of people in those caves, Dad. I hope you can find me. It was
in St. Paul.
Right, on the Mississippi River. Mm-hmm. This dominated everybody's thinking. Everybody thought the end had come, and they were completely dialed into what we would be calling in the old neighborhood survival.
Mm.
We wanted to live.
Mm.
There was no internet. There was no Pornhub. There were no pot stores. In fact, nobody was even smoking pot yet. Everybody was stone cold sober, freaking out that nuclear war was imminent. Now, here today we sit, and you're asking me what's going on in the Belarus. Well, my favorite villain, Prigozhin, died.
Took a dirt nap.
He did.
More like air.
Oh, and you know what? If we live through this in about 20 years, they're going to make about 10 movies about this guy because he was a great villain. Now they got a new villain. We've run a new villain out there. It's President Lukashenko of the Belarus.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to take my word for it. You could go to, for example, Professor Penn's podcast this past Tuesday night, April 2nd. Look it up. Or you can go to YouTube and you will find, if it's still there, a video of him sitting down with the head of his military discussing on video an imminent attack on Lithuania and Poland to unite Mother Russia with Kaliningrad, which interestingly is a little gift left to us by World War II. We'll talk about that in a second. They're actually taught, and they're moving all their military assets to
Belarus is.
Oh, yes.
So he was caught on video saying they're going to attack Lithuania.
Oh, he was not caught. He was letting everybody know because a good villain.
Oh, so it was like a public service
announcement. It was a public service announcement. Here we come.
Wow.
And it was gripping, just gripping. And
which everybody's going to say is got to be at the behest of Vladimir Putin, Russia, because Belarus has taken such a pro-Russian position in the latest series of conflicts,
Well,
right?
actually, Putin then released a follow-up video a day later where he said, hey, Poland, he goes, my dear friends of Poland have forgotten that we, the Russians, and Comrade Stalin liberated you from the Nazi war machine because your Western masters had abandoned you. This is Putin's words.
Mm.
All the people that are saying I'm a Putin apologist, I'm not. I just think this stuff is really, really gripping. It gets me excited. Putin said, hey, you Poles, you forgot that the West abandoned you to the German military war machine and that we Russians actually liberated you from the Nazis and we gave you many lands as a gift to compensate you for your suffering at the hands of the Nazis. Don't you remember this? Now, you Poles, you have some designs on the Ukraine. And then he said something hilarious. He goes, now, of course, if those traders in the Ukraine want to sell part of their country, because that's what traders do, we don't care. That's none of our business. That's between you all. But if you all attack the Belarus, you're attacking Russia, and we will respond as is necessary because they view Belarus as part of the Russian Federation.
Right.
So here we are.
But Lithuania was too, wasn't it?
It was, and the Baltic states, Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, were liberated when the Iron Curtain came down, and they
Right.
became their own little statelets.
But they were part of the Russian Federation, former USSR, right?
They were part of the Soviet Union.
Okay.
Yes, they were conquered.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was this little gift, okay? The little gift, I say this to you, you're going to laugh about this. I think I can get a smile out of you. Attorneys, when they write contracts, they leave many terms they're not clearly defined. And that almost makes sure that in the future, there'll be lawsuits that will allow them to make a lot of money solving the arguments that come by their lack of defining the terms up front. They're just building in future work. And in a very similar way, when World War II ended, there was a little piece of Prussia, which would be Germany, that was called Königsberg, which is a very highly industrialized, very educated workforce. It's a port on the Baltic Ocean. It was part of Germany. Guess what happened? They made it part of the Soviet Union. But they didn't connect it to the Soviet Union. It just sits out there, separated from Mother Russia by Lithuania. And that's why our new villain, Lukashenko, has said, we have to liberate our brothers and connect Mother Russia with Kaliningrad. They changed the name from Königsberg to Kaliningrad. So they have this little gift that they made, the military-industrial complex. They left a little gift that was almost certainly going to facilitate the need for more weapons and more killing sometime in the future.
Mm.
And that time is, according to Lukashenko, right now. And this should be on the news 24 hours a day. We should be gripped.
We're going right now.
We should be. This guy said we're going right. He asked his general, can we take this? He goes, yes. He said, look at how silly these Poles are. It's only 50 miles across this Suwałki gap. There's no way they can hold this gap. Can we hold this gap? And the general says, yes, we can. We've made the plans. We're ready to go. And here they are threatening this Article 5 triggering attack on Poland, which would mean that the world would be instantly involved in World War III, NATO versus Russia. At the same time, we're not done. There's more intrigue. About a year ago, Biden said there's no way we're giving F-16s to these Ukrainians. That's going to cause World War III. And about 4 months later, they said, let's give them F-16s. But they had to train the pilots. They had to put together the International Air Force of a handful of Ukrainians and a bunch of Americans and whatever other nationalities they trained to fly these F-16s and attack Russia. Now, the F-16, it's not really a game changer, but it is a supersonic fighter plane of some capability. And Putin came out and said, now, you NATO countries, if you think you're going to keep these F-16s on your territory to attack my troops in the Ukraine or attack Russia, hey, we're going to blow those F-16s up wherever they are. And guess where they are? They're everywhere. And they're all nuclear capable. There's two versions of the F-16. There's the regular one for just killing guys in Datsun pickups, and then there's the F-16s that can kill cities. And they gave them the city killers. So here we sit on the verge of World War III. And, I went out this last weekend, and the restaurants were full, and the malls were full, and everybody was having a good time. And I'm looking at all these people, and I'm thinking, do any of you all know what's going on? Or do any of you care? And I came to the conclusion that, number one, people don't know what's going on. And if they did know,
they still may not care.
They don't care. They'd say, Professor Penn, would you please shut up? You're screwing up my high. Yeah. And that's where we're at. That's where we're at. Now, that's not where the Europeans are at. The Europeans have the Russian military war machine on their doorstep, pissed off. The Europeans are very aware of what's going on. I'm talking about the populace in Europe. The people know. They know. But we the people, hey.
It's between y'all.
Well, we can't even make that decision. The news sources that people are listening to, we could go on 24 hours a day and just talk about news because it's that underreported. I'm very puzzled by this. I have a survival chakra. I would like to live. I'm willing to fight to live. I have fought to live. I don't understand the passivity of the American people. Do you all know we're getting ready to get killed, go to war, fight? And I'm watching these people on X. Oh, man, we got to get in and support these Ukrainians.
What's it got to do with us? Why are we going to get killed?
Why are we going to get killed?
Yeah.
Very hard to contain a general war in Europe. If you go on history, before World War I.
Never made landfall here.
But we went over there.
That's fine. But,
okay.
But
you know what was
just because they be a warring over there doesn't mean they gonna be a warring over here.
Yeah, but let me tell you something, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. Nothing has really changed since the caveman. Like we're two caveman. You're a lot bigger than me. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna hit your ass in the head with a rock. I'm gonna throw it at you from a distance because you might catch me and eat me. Okay. The rocks that we had have been improving in technological prowess. And in World War II, the last time we had a world war, the technology to wage an intercontinental war really was not fully developed. But today, the Russians have missiles that they can launch on submarines right off our coast that can fry our cities in, 10 minutes after they launch them, 5 minutes. So the technology.
Are we sure about that?
Oh, yes, we are.
I feel like that may be a little boomer propaganda.
We had this conversation before.
Yeah. No, I'm not buying it.
So you don't think the Russians have submarines?
I mean, my first instinct about the war capabilities of Russia are what's taking so long in Ukraine? What are you waiting? Why are they waiting in Ukraine? I mean, it's if they have the capability to overcome the entire United States military, the full NATO alliance, and all of our anti-missile defenses and things of that nature, submarine, capability. What's taking them so long in Ukraine is next door neighbor. What are they waiting on? Are they like slow dragging the war in Ukraine for other geopolitical purposes, or?
Well, there's a lot of ways to think about this.
My first instinct is, if they had all these capabilities that they can strike Washington, D.C. or Los Angeles or Minneapolis, first of all, you coastal elites, you got to deal with coastal problems before we do here in the heartland. Anyway, I mean, so Minnesota, I mean, I'm in a place of my own, same way with the rising oceans. And if we go to world war, stuff is going to come down to where you are geographically located here in the United States and there in Europe. We got a different prospect than the coastal cities. If they can hit even coastal cities, I'm struggling to figure out why they're having such trouble with the Ukraine.
Well, there's probably a lot of technology reasons associated with that. There's been, I think, the numbers got real funny, right?
Mm-hmm.
First it was we had $200 billion in the deal, then it went down to $100 billion, kind of like a shell game.
Right.
We have just remember.
We have no clue how much.
Well, just remember, we just counted the inventory
$2 trillion.
$2 trillion of weapons.
In through the front, out through the back.
Right. So
good fellas.
we just don't know what's been deployed over there, number one. Number two, Ukraine, where my family is from, the Ukrainians, lots of them speak Russian as the first language. My family is from the Ukraine. We spoke Russian as a first language in my house. And I think Putin
is being soft with them somewhat.
I think they have been trying to leave open the possibility.
I don't know, man. They artillery shelled the shit out of Ukraine.
No, they are. It's going.
But they've been doing it for.
But they didn't start out that way. You said if
but it progressed quick though. I mean, there was 250,000. There was at least 100,000 Ukrainians dead within the first 8 months of this thing.
That's another thing. Where are these?
Maybe.
Numbers?
Yeah, I mean,
who
you're
knows?
right. You're right.
We weren't there.
Yeah, well,
we don't know.
Here's the thing. What's stopping again? If Russia's so capable. Okay, I like your theory. Fine. Russia. Vladimir Putin's playing altruistic for the Russian-speaking, landsmen, tribesmen there in Ukraine's territory. Fine. Okay. I don't necessarily think so, but it's possible. I mean, that's on par with what he said in the Tucker interview in terms of viewing the certain parts of Ukraine as being Russian. But still, I mean, the conventional wisdom about Russia when it comes to world war with the United States is that Russia has the capability to bring down our power grid through cyber terrorism or cyber warfare, that they have that type of cyber capability. So what's stopping them from just rolling over Kiev? I mean, surely Kiev doesn't have the type of cybersecurity that the United States of America does.
Well, right now, Russia's destroying the energy infrastructure of the Ukrainian state. Large segments of the population now are without power. There's a dam by the Zaporizhia power plant that they've hit many times with very powerful missiles. That's no longer generating electricity. That dam could let go. They have now moved from a more limited attempt to gain control of the country. And yet, we're missing the negotiation part.
Right.
I mean, there was a negotiation up front between Zelensky and Putin directly that was brokered between the Israelis and the Turks. Well, there's an odd couple. And they had a deal. And that deal was circumvented by the United States government and the British government. Now, there's been several additional attempts by the Russians to set up a negotiation to freeze the conflict along the line of interaction. And the United States government, our government, we the people, have consistently rebuffed the Russians. I'm making up a story. I really don't know. But let me just break it back to another thing. Where was the American military's ability to subdue the Iraqis or subdue the Afghanis?
Yeah.
So when you talk about conventional war with a group of people that will not give in, because clearly there's a bunch of Ukrainians that won't give in. Okay, I think conventional war is called conventional war for a reason. When it escalates to a nuclear confrontation, you got a whole other level, and we've gone to a place where we've never been before, so we really don't know what's going to happen. Let us not find out. Even if you're correct, and the boomers have been sold a highly overstated nuclear weapons capability to scare the shit out of us, which is a good theory. I like the theory. I actually like that theory. I hope you're correct. I hope they shoot them off and they're like bottle rockets and nothing happens.
Confetti.
Right. Well, it's like the Houthis are shooting these little drones at these ships. Yeah. They've killed 5 or 6 people, but none of these ships go to the bottom of the ocean.
Right.
They're shooting bottle rockets at these people. Okay.
Right.
What's the result? Ocean shipping costs are skyrocketing. Great. But I think that the conventional warfare of the Russians has been measured because they wanted a negotiated settlement. They didn't want full out
kinetic war. Okay.
Okay, we're going up this ladder of escalation.
Okay.
So as we go up that ladder of escalation,
shit's gonna get real.
It's getting more intense. And of course, here's what's happened. They call us maggots now. Okay, the MAGA Republican wing of the Republican Party has, up till now, refused to allow Speaker Johnson to bring this Ukraine funding bill to the floor for a vote. It's already passed the Senate. Well, it's going to come up for a vote very shortly. And they're going to say, oh, got to save our brothers, the Ukrainians. And they're going to allocate $100 billion for Taiwan, Israel, and Israel already picked up $4 billion on the $1.2 trillion supplemental. So they just, kind of under the table said, here, Israelis, here's $4 billion. But they have
It's
not.
a lot of cash.
It's enough to kill a lot of Palestinians. But the
Which they don't even need.
Ukrainians have not been funded by the U.S., but they have been funded. The French have stepped into the gap. The English have stepped into the gap. And still, their lines are collapsing. And right now, they are no longer making forward fortifications in the battlefield. They're actually fortifying their cities. They're getting ready for the Alamo. So let's say they pass this funding bill and Biden signs it, and there's $100 billion for the Ukrainians. By the time those weapons get there and get deployed, it probably is going to be too late. It's probably going to be too late. I don't know for sure, but probably, unless, of course, it's a cover story and they got all the weapons over there and they're just going to pull the tarps off and say, let's go, boys.
Now we can use them.
Now we can use them because we got the cover story. Because you need $100 billion to cover $2 trillion. It's called a, cover. It's a cover, right? Maybe. When $2 trillion of inventory goes missing, at that point, it's whatever story you want to make up, because that is something that was announced, that $88 million was spent to count the inventory and half could not be accounted for. Once you've entered that kind of a zone where half the inventory is gone, how do we know who's doing what, running what, and for why?
Right. Well, I still come back to let the Russians do what the Russians are going to do and let the Europeans fight their own war. Got nothing to do with us. Not worried about the Russians making landfall in America. If they want to if they want to have a good old fashioned nuclear shootout, I mean, hey, what are we going to do? I mean, that's coming regardless. If people really want to go to that level, which I'm not saying they don't, that's going to come regardless. But no level of ground warfare there that we participate in Eastern Europe is going to stop nuclear war. I mean, surely we're not saying, that this whole notion, this whole geopolitical strategy that if we occupy Western Russia or the Russian forces in Eastern Europe in the heartland, it'll stop them from shooting off nukes is patently retarded. It's going to, if anything, instigate them shooting off nukes.
Well, that's what they say.
Well, that's what they say, but that's just a basic and logical hierarchy of escalation, right? I mean, they're going to go to, more desperate means. Even if we say we're going to be able to suppress their forward movement and that their forward movement and expansion is the ultimate end game, then us impeding on that is going to cause escalation.
Well, I watch a bunch of these neocons and read everything they say.
Mm-hmm.
So here's what they say. Putin's never going to stop. Which, with our new arch villain, Leftovchenko, there could be an argument to be made. But let's, I have 2 points.
Why do we care about Lithuania or Estonia or Latvia? I'm just saying. I mean, so he wants to reconstruct. Let's just say worst case scenario, he wants to reunite the former USSR. Big deal. I mean, it's kind of like a small pipe dream for a man, for a man who we paint as a big villain. That's a small pipe dream. It's like, okay.
I have 2 points to make, and they're going to take a minute. And thank you for letting me take so much of the stage.
Mm-hmm.
My whole life, the Russians have been painted out as being very untrustworthy, kind of an unsavory group of people you can't trust, and expansionist and imperial. And there was an imperial Russian empire that was part of the kings and queens of Europe. And in that time, when we had the kings and queens of Europe in association with the church, and everybody else was a serf, and they played what was called the great game in what was called the Old World Order or the Old World, Britain attacked Russia in 1805 in Russia. Britain attacked Russia in Russia in 1853. The French got tag team. Napoleon attacked Russia in 1812. The entire country was occupied after World War I by foreign troops, including American troops. America had 17,000 gringos in Vladivostok in 1917. The Germans entered Russia and attacked it in Operation Barbarossa in 1942. Then we had the Cold War. Now we have this war. All these wars are in Russia. If you get beat 10 times, your attitude's going to get different. I mean, there's people listening to us, never been in a fight in their life, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's people listening to us, maybe been in 100 fights. They think differently.
Mm-hmm.
You just think differently when you've been in a lot of fights, particularly if you got attacked. So the one thing I want to say as a predicate is, whatever we believe about the Russians is written by the PhDs who write the history books, and the Russians have a completely alternative history and view of this thing. They think they defeated the Nazis as allies of the Americans. I was just out to lunch today with a guy from France who told me that in France, the French people are sympathetic to the Russians because they know if the Russians hadn't been involved in that war, they'd all be Nazis today.
Mm.
So there's different perspectives on it. That's number one. Number two, in reference to your question, I'm just making a predicate of saying, how do we know?
Right.
We're just taught whatever the textbook says.
Right.
We're not even Europeans, which is the point of the whole summation of my argument. We're not Europeans.
We're pseudo-Europeans.
No, we're not Europeans at all.
We're faux Europeans.
We're faux conservatives is what we are. Okay? This country was founded in 1776 as an anti-imperialist, anti-British Empire, anti-colonialist effort politically, no different than the Indians threw off the colonial yoke or the Brazilians or the Mexicans or all these countries that the European powers had colonized to extract wealth. You know, we were no different. We had an anti-imperialist sentiment. Yet I watch all these conservatives saying, boy, we've got to defend the post-World War II Democrat liberal order against it used to be the Hun. Then it was the Nazis. Now it's the Russians. We've got to defend. What are we defending? We're not defending the original sentiment that formed this country,
Right.
which was anti-imperialist, and our founding president, George Washington, who said in his farewell address, beware of foreign entanglements. And what have we done? We've entangled ourselves everywhere. So for all my conservatives, and I have a new line, you might like this line, every nationalist is a reformed conservative. Because we think through and we go, boy, I thought I was conserving something. You're not conserving anything that was American.
The whole conservative thing in general is a scam. I mean, we just got to start. I don't even know what I tend to agree with. Sorry, what's my guy's name? Alexander Dugin. I tend to agree with Alexander Dugin's theory of the case that conservatism and liberalism are two forms of liberalism. That's it. Prove me wrong.
All right, well,
The leading conservative thought leaders, they say it out loud. They say it, unabashed. They openly admit that conservatism to them is to conserve what's good about liberalism. And they wonder why liberalism is taken over. It's out of control. Because the counter movement is literally controlled opposition. Their whole thing is based and measured on what the front of the pack is doing. They're just playing, response. They're playing call and response.
But the average self-identified conservative
has the wrong identity.
Well, that's correct. And
has nothing to do. The conservative movement is only circa post-World War II.
Perfect. We have all these people that are listening, and they all have conservative friends.
It's like Whitlock, the whole fearless audience. The whole thing is, I'm conservative. Oh, black conservatives. And what does that even mean?
I'll tell you what it means.
Means you watch Fox News?
No,
Means
no.
you listen to Hannity?
No. It means that there's a bedrock
Mm-hmm.
upon which the post-World War II Democrat liberal order rests. That's the culture we live in.
That's what they're trying to conserve.
The bedrock of that is Darwinism, not faith.
Right.
It's Darwinism.
Right.
There's two pillars that come out of that bedrock. One is the coercion of the U.S. military, which is basically the expression of science.
Mm-hmm.
The other is the coercion of the U.S. dollar, which is the materialism. So our country was founded by people that wanted to practice their faith and wanted to live in harmony in a community that was anti-imperialist, anti-Darwinist, anti-slavery. And we had a problem with that, I get it, but it was there in the writing, where human beings were viewed not as inventory, but as children of a creator that granted unalienable rights.
Mm-hmm.
That's gone away. The conservative movement lost its way after World War II and bought into that coercion of the U.S.
No, there
military.
was no conservative movement before World War II.
Well, no, there was a conservative movement before World War II. Yes, there was.
No.
Of course there was.
No. The first No.
Call it by a different name then.
We need to.
Great. What would you like to call it?
I don't know.
How about Christianity?
There you go. That's better.
Okay.
Yeah. Pax Americana. The America First movement. Oh, there was America First.
There was
back
an
then.
America First movement before World War I and before World War II.
There was an American Patriot movement.
And it kind of verged, and why it failed for a reason. It failed because it was racist. Boy, we got to that one right at the same time. It was perfect. There was no script. Anybody that's listening, watching, with no script, because it's very obvious why the movement failed.
Right.
Because it also
the counter narrative of racism was too profound for it to keep the right momentum.
It failed. It failed because the contradiction upon which it rests was the preservation, the conservation of a Protestantism that was Darwinist, Calvinism.
Right.
Okay, so it was not fundamentally sound from an intellectual and spiritual perspective. That's why we've had many in the Hebrews. Hey, we've gone after some of these folks, fellow American citizens that seem to want to make a lot of judgments about their other groups here.
In the neighborhood, we say they can't get right. They just can't get right. I mean, that was a shortcoming. But my point is that the conservative movement that you're talking about, the mainstream conservative movement, or the general term conservative that most conservative American citizens identify with, is a nothing movement. It doesn't exist. It's not real. I mean, the thought leaders of the movement openly say, we're conserving what is liberal, the best of what is liberal. The best of what is liberal? The whole thing is, and again, you go back to simple terms. Adolf Hitler is the great scapegoat of the whole deal. Really. The whole thing is, Adolf Hitler was a evil, wicked, diabolical man, and he's the justification for globalism. What happened to the Jews? This is what I told you when we first talked, the very first time.
Our first
I said Israel and the Jews are the linchpin of New World Order.
And my head blew off my shoulders.
I mean, it's not even an indictment of Jews or Israel. It's more an indictment of how the rest of the world was co-opted into this narrative that we have to accept global governance, or let's even say how the conservatives in this country were co-opted into the narrative that we have to accept one world government or global government, agendas to fight off Hitler. And here we are. We had that. I mean, the level of dishonesty in it is profound when you say, hey, we did this to stop there from being another Hitler, but now you make Putin out to be the next Hitler. That means your plan didn't fucking work. What you were trying to do, this whole Kissinger, Brzezinski, all the markets and supply chains being entangled against what George Washington said. I guess Henry Kissinger's a step farther, a step smarter than George Washington. I mean, even that is a level of intellectual cuckery I can't quite describe. But Kissinger knows better than George Washington. Okay. So we were going to make all these economic trade and market strategies or whatever. This was going to be the great deterrent to World War. Here we are. I mean, when did they step up and say, "Oh, we fucked up. That didn't work. Oops." They won't even do that. They just keep marching forward like we're going to go all the way. We're going to go to the finish line with this thing.
We're going to defend democracy,
right?
Which is defending the post-World War II Democrat liberal order, which rests on the hegemony of U.S. military coercion and the hegemony of the U.S. financial manipulation of world markets through the U.S. dollar. That's what it rests on. Now, why did conservatives get in on this? Because, there was a conservative movement after World War II. That's for sure, right? After World War II, I was born close enough to know what it feels like to be large and in charge. It affected everybody. It was our self-image. Probably your generation doesn't have that. My generation, hey, V8s, dual carbs, baby. Okay, gas is 25 cents a gallon. Fantastic. We're the masters of all we survey because all of our competitors, the Japanese, the Germans, the French, the English, the Russians, all of their industrial capabilities were destroyed in that war. So we had the only intact industrial base in 1946. Now, before that, if you look at the history of the Republican Party, it was always a pro-American manufacturing party for high tariffs and high duties to protect domestic manufacturing and domestic jobs. That was the political agenda of the Republican Party. Borders, and spiritual borders, because they were associated also with the Christian Protestant past of the country. We had the Democrat Party. What was their history? That'd be called free trade. How do we know it's free trade? Because there's no freer trade than the trade in human beings. And the Democrats were the party of the South. That's just a fact. I mean, look it up. I'm not making it up. It's in Wikipedia. Everybody can go see that if they want to go verify what I'm saying. But after the war, free trade was an experiment. And I'm not saying it was necessarily ill or evil. It was used as an experiment to try to bind the world together, but the thing that really drove it, of course, was the United States didn't have any competitors. This country ran a trade surplus from 1946 to 1976. For 30 years, we took in more than we sent out. Took 30 years for the Japanese to catch up with our country and start to undercut our pricing. And then the Koreans came after that, and then the Chinese, and then all the rest of the Asians. And guess what? The conservative movement was co-opted in the grab for the cash. That conservative movement was previously...
became the free market, free trade Republican Party.
That's correct. And it was a non-interventionist, non-military party who was the American First People, okay? But after the war happened, we won. President Roosevelt convinced Winston Churchill under, hey, you want money? Do what I say. Very kind of mafia-esque. To sign the Atlantic Charter, forced the English to give up their colonial enterprise, the determination of all people to vote to determine their own... Stop! Their own political future.
Yeah.
And as, Stalin said, it's not who votes, who counts the votes is what matters.
Right. That's
So
right.
what they did was they said, you can determine whatever political future you want as long as you choose the post-World War II Democrat liberal order. As long as you vote for that, you're good.
Yeah.
You're good. You're good.
The illusion of choice.
And the illusion of choice. And the Republican conservative movement got all in on this money grab. In fact, when Nixon opened, it was interesting. The Japanese business was always dominated by the Democrat because they were in power when the Japanese came down. The Republicans were cut out of that business. They didn't get any of the action. China was opened by Nixon. Guess who dominated the Chinese supply chain? And that would be the Republican business people. So they've all been, this conservative movement's all been about free trade, low taxes, low regulation. It's all about me.
Money grab.
And that's only the money part. Let's talk about the spiritual part, because I was there.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of my favorite stories for Hebrews.
Mm-hmm.
1972, 1,100 kids in my high school. We didn't know what the birth control pill was. Every woman went in my high school for her well-being checkup, and the doctor said, "How's your menstrual period?" The girl looked at him, I don't know. He said, "Do you bleed?" "Yeah." "Hey, we got a pill for you. We'll make it bleed less." My entire high school community was on the pill in 72. In 73, we had Roe versus Wade. By 74, my high school was an orgy. It did not matter. There was no conservative voice. Well, there were some, but there was no real pushback on the sexual freedom and the drug use. And that was done by Democrats and conservatives and independents. Everybody got in on the destruction of the spiritual borders. And if anybody was going to conserve something, they would have conserved the spiritual borders. So we became all about the money, all about the intimidation. And it was both. So when Dugan comments that there's really no conservative movement, he's just looking at the facts. And when you say it's just kind of a scam, what do you call it? The controlled opposition?
Mm-hmm.
It's not really controlled. These people are all on the payroll. They're just taking the money. We've lost what it is to have a community of Americans that care one for another, treat others as we would like to be treated ourselves. We've lost the basics of what it was to have a creator who granted us unalienable rights. And the conservatives lost. Now, I'm not saying there were conservatives that maybe tried to conserve. They just failed. It was the failure of the conservative movement that gave birth to the Tea Party. And for all you Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley people that are saying the maggots are terrible, hey, you caused the maggots to come up out of the ground by not conserving what it was to be an American. You caused this by failing. So this Trumpian movement, this American national movement, is really an effort, in my opinion, or at least that's what I think we're doing at Free People Radio, to rediscover what it was to be an American, what our founding documents talk about, how it is to have an American community, how to be together and care about each other. And if we put the well-being of each other on the table, not the well-being of the Ukrainians, that's another thing. The border's open. Hey, the military is everywhere. Does our government, does our people have a border? No. We're everywhere in the world. Is it a surprise we don't have a border when we're borderless by design? So what are we really doing when we start screaming about build a wall? It's a symptom. That's not the cause. The cause is in our minds, in our self-image, we're the rulers of the universe.
We have no limits.
What could be more arrogant and more of an affront to faith than to believe that I am the master of all I survey? It's no different than being a king. But everybody's a king. King in the castle, right? You're king in your own castle. No, we got to dial this in. And that's what you're saying in your own way when you say, I really don't care what happens to those people. It's not that you don't care what happens to them on a human basis. It's just that our country needs to care about our borders. I think that's what you, am I right or am I wrong about that?
Well, I mean, even more simply, our country needs to have borders. Can't even, I mean, we don't even have them to care about right now. There are no borders. And I don't just mean the southern border there in Texas. There are no borders. We have no boundaries as a culture. We have no cultural boundaries. It's any and all things for money and science. Science has no boundaries, has no borders.
Every invention is a good thing.
Every invention is a great thing. You know,
Bring on the clones.
The artificial intelligence thing. I've been talking about it all week. Talked about it on Monday, touched on it on Wednesday, and I just said, I told you all that the scientific method was one of the 4 great heresies of the West, and people were like,
"What?"
I remember Jason Whitlock was like, gave me that look. Like, what are you talking about?
I mean, that looked like he was.
It's just like, that goes over people's heads. It's like, well, yeah, these people are playing over your head. They really are. And, this whole idea that knowledge without wisdom is a net positive, like scientific progress for the sake of progress will end in the net positive for humanity is like, you people stupid. It's like, the military is the driving force. I mean, they go, oh, social media was a plague on society or the young people or the internet or DARPA. DARPA created the internet. And you're looking at when you look at the internet and what's become of social media, big tech, you're looking at a wing of the military industrial complex.
Did you see that piece that I ran with Herman Kahn?
Yeah, Herman Kahn.
From 1957 at the Hudson Institute.
Fat Herman.
Did I play that for you?
Yeah, I see it.
Okay, everybody, you can go find this on YouTube. Just put in Herman Kahn, Hudson Institute on YouTube. I think they leave this stuff. This is how goofy I am. I think they leave this stuff out there just to drive me personally crazy because there's no way this should be there. And one day it won't be there.
One day soon. Yeah.
One day soon. It's Herman Kahn being interviewed, and he just lays out the whole security state in 1957 about how the surveillance is going. He even uses the Black Panthers as his example of a group that, as he says, throws sand in the gears. I mean, they really throw sand. We have to figure out how to deal with these people. He goes, we need to be able to put a city to sleep.
Libertarianism is the anti-system theology.
It's just
that's Klaus Schwab.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
The great enemy is libertarianism.
But I think our government funds, at what we can tell in the budget, maybe $500 billion a year of research. So you take the defense budget, which is $900 billion, and $500 billion of research in the universities. So you got $1.4 trillion. Then you throw the interest on that, and you're at $2 trillion. And then you got all the black bag programs we don't know anything about. We spend about $2.5 trillion, in my estimate, on figuring out how to kill people more efficiently and control the American people. A la the beginning of the podcast, nobody cares. Everybody's totally pacified. I'm not. I've been sweating out my bed every night. Can't sleep. Can't sleep. I mean, I just can't sleep because I know what's going on. And then you get into the economic crisis that we're in. I was watching this kid from Minneapolis. His name's Will Stensel. And he's got a pretty good following on X. And he said,
it's a funny name.
Yeah, it is kind of a funny name. Anyhow, he goes, the only reason that Trump is doing better than Biden is because of Fox News and right-wing media. And I'm thinking to myself, man, do you know James Carville when he said it's the economy, stupid? Credit card debt just hit its all-time record. All time. People, over $1 trillion of credit card debt. Interest is 8%. It's wiping out every small business in the country, including mine. Nobody can survive this. It's the end of all the small businesses. The people are borrowing money to keep the bullshit going, and eventually the card's going to say, tilt, you can't get any more. We borrow $1 trillion every 100 days. Inflation is at least 25% since Biden took over, at least. And these people are standing around saying a couple of podcasters are bringing up the Democrat Party. It's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous because I know there's this group on the left that really cares, and I know there's a group on the right that really cares, and then there's this big group in the center that just looks at their checkbook and goes, where's the money? And they're going, whoa, this is not working. And they're saying, hey, these guys are in. I got no money. I don't care who they are. I'm voting for these guys. Maybe it'll get better. It's just that simple.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot. I mean, I can't tell you how many people. Oh, a good friend of mine. I don't even know if I could say his name. I'm gonna bring him on the podcast, and then I'm gonna let him share it first before I say his name. But we were talking the other day. At the dinner table, and he said this is gonna be the first election that I vote Republican. This is going to be the first time I vote, not just because I'm running as a Republican.
No, he's just looking at his checkbook.
No, that was what he said. He didn't say I'm voting Republican because I'm voting for you. He said I'm voting Republican because the groceries are out of control. Just the groceries. I mean, the whole thing is ridiculous. $100, you go to the grocery store for $300, $400 used to last you the whole month. Used to last you 3 weeks, right? At the end of the 3 weeks, you may be scraping together. You may be going out to eat, a couple of times that get past that last week of the month. First of the month comes, people get paid again. You're going back to the grocery store, restocking for the month. You're having to go restock every week. I mean, $300-400 is bringing you a week's worth of groceries. And then to go back and piece stuff together, little, whatever it is that you're doing for dinner on the day is going to cost you $60 just to go in and get something for the day, for the week. I mean, it's that bad. It really is. I was in there myself. I was looking, I was like, what is going on here? And that there's just, yes, that is going to drive a significant change. The question is, do they still think they can cheat? Do they still think they can cheat, or are they going to try and deploy another strategy? Because to me, how it looks, and I was talking to experts, people who were interested in my election with Amy, and they're like, Amy's vulnerable. I don't know what anybody's thinking. Amy's completely vulnerable. It's not just her; it's the entire Democrat apparatus. Everybody's vulnerable across the board because of this. I mean, the economy is one of the hugest, one of the biggest motivators of voting habits. Money. I mean, when you create a money culture, when you create a death and debt culture, and you create a radical materialist society, of course, people are going to start to eventually look at their own poverty and financial hardships and go, well, wait a second. Hold on. What? We got to think money first. They don't even think ideology first. There are some out there who vote Democrat who obviously are ideologues, but the vast majority of people are thinking about their own self-interest. Now the self-interest is becoming very evident. I don't think they believe they can cheat this time. I feel the narrative ramping up like a sort of concession speech. Joe Biden's an asshole. Joe, for real. I mean, that's kind of the tone out there. Joe Biden's an asshole. He's too old. It's ridiculous. We don't want Joe Biden. We don't want RFK. They're sort of ramping up a narrative on the Democrat side like we didn't have any good choices, right? Let Donald Trump win this one. Let this one play out. He can only be in there 4 years. We'll stifle him with impeachments, and we'll deploy our rhino Republican counterparts and friends to try and stifle him from doing too much damage, and then we'll run whoever against whoever they bring up in 4 years from now. Because who are the real prospects to go next? Carrie Lake, she's got the star power, you could say, to potentially be the first Republican woman to run for president, maybe out in front, maybe. Possibly. I mean, I wouldn't mind it.
You got Matt Gaetz.
Not enough juice. Has the right stones for it. I don't think he has enough star power, juice to do it. Honestly, that's just my honest opinion. I like Matt, but I don't think he has the juice, to be honest, especially following Trump. I mean, that's going to be a huge vote. I mean, you got to be a superstar. Right. I mean, there's a whole level here where politics has become propaganda.
Here's one that's blowing people's heads off, because there's all this.
Is it Ron? The Ron DeSantis. But Ron's almost blown his entire wad here in this.
Trump could resurrect him.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, he could resurrect him.
Oh, that would, yes.
We could set up. But the problem with DeSantis is, from my perspective, all the Ron DeSantis people, Nikki Haley people, please, you're conservatives in your own mind. You're not conservatives.
Yeah.
You're promoting a coercion by nuclear weapons and a coercion by materialism, which has nothing to do with conservatism. That's the post-World War II Democrat.
What do you mean? You mean the sword of Damocles wasn't in the Bible? Is that what you're saying? The sword of Damocles isn't a biblical story? It's not a biblical reference?
You know what God can do? God can do. It's not up to me and my political cronies to try to reproduce the power of the Lord.
Right.
That would be the Tower of Babel.
Right.
And that's what we've done. That's science. So if we're going to have some humility, that's how we're going to restore our spiritual borders. That's how we self-govern. We self-govern by placing limits on ourselves consensually because there's a benefit to those borders, which has been wiped away by our progressive materialist education. Before the
at Yale,
Harvard,
at Dartmouth,
Princeton,
at Northwestern,
University of Chicago,
University of Minnesota,
Columbia.
Yeah,
that's way downstream.
For sure. But the Carlson School of Business is pretty high up the trough.
The professor,
very prestigious.
the professors teaching there went to Columbia,
True.
Harvard.
True.
You know, the point is the benefits of spiritual borders have been lost intentionally. The benefits are lost. What is the benefit? If I govern myself, I don't need an oppressive government. When I can no longer govern myself because my spiritual borders are removed because anything goes,
I'm begging for tyranny.
I'm begging for tyranny. That's right, because tyranny, and these same conservatives that we're criticizing tonight are going to be the ones on the front lines begging for the police state to protect them as law and order continues to break down, which is precisely why law and order is breaking down. And people don't get this.
Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Well,
yeah.
people don't get this. It's just so obvious to me. So, of course, they say, Professor Penn, you've lost your mind. Okay. Come on over here in the lost your mind. Don't you call your, it's please call me crazy.
Please. It's please. Call me crazy.
Please.
With a comma.
There you go. I like that. And that, it really has a ring to it when you think about it in that perspective, because you got to let go. You got to let go of your conscious mind. As Obi-Wan Kenobi said to Luke, you must let go your conscious mind. Or maybe it was Yoda, but it was the same thing. They were Jedi masters, and the masters know that if you think too much and you believe what other people tell you without seeing it for yourself.
Without feeling it.
Without feeling it.
Without the force.
Without the force.
Mm-hmm. Then you're an asshole.
Can be an asshole. You just might be sitting in your room looking at Pornhub. Maybe that's an asshole too. But the point is, the spiritual borders create the conditions for self-governance. Self-governance creates the conditions for a small government and the maximum freedom for each citizen. And we've lost that as a value. So the game is lost, right? I mean, it's lost. We've lost it. It's over. It's just, what's the back game here? Do we have a play at the end? And what is that play? This is my own opinion. It's not Donald Trump. It's not Ron DeSantis. It's every person in this audience taking the responsibility of speaking with, talking to their friends, neighbors, family, learning the arguments that we're working on together as a community, and using your God-given ability to persuade, cajole, convince. It has to be coming from the American citizens. That's the bastion against tyranny. It was the citizens of Eastern Europe and of Russia that brought down the communist edifice of the Soviet Union. There was no revolution with arms. It was Solzhenitsyn. We've said this before. You're lying. We know you're lying. You know we know you're lying. We know you know we know you know you're lying, but still you keep lying. And that's where we're at. We're living in a lie.
Yeah.
We're living in a lie.
Yeah.
And if we can't get to the truth, that's what's great about the podcasting. But they got a new bill in Congress to eliminate all this. And the Justice Department has filed an antitrust lawsuit against Apple. And if you read it, what they really want is control of the content so that they can say what's okay and what's not okay.
What do you mean? Explain. Talk about it.
These podcasts, like the one you're listening to tonight,
War Room, other ones,
all of them,
mm-hmm.
And everybody can go.
Crowder, Alex Jones,
Gates has got one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's just a lot of them.
Tulsi's got one.
Rogan.
Yeah, Rogan.
What was 25 million people listen to Rogan or something like that? It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
This is the free exchange of information. And of course, there's a lot of information that is exchanged that is not correct. But as I told this guy that visited me from France today, Le Monde is propaganda, right? He started laughing. He said, it sure is. I mean, people know that the information has to be sorted out. You have to feel it.
Yeah.
You have to put the time in. And most of the citizens are still watching, which news source would you like to impugn first?
MSNBC.
There you go.
The railhead of the Democrat liberal order.
And what's their thing? Their thing is, look at your 401k. If you want to know how good Biden is doing, look at your 401k.
Look at the inflated stock market.
Look at that. Isn't that incredible?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
I said on my podcast on Wednesday, and I think on Monday, and I think on the Royce White show too, don't be talking to me about the overall health of the economy and pointing at the stock market. I don't give a shit what the Dow says. I don't give a shit what Goldman Sachs says. I don't give a shit what Jamie Dimon says. I don't give a shit about what any of these hedge funds or Wall Street say. The real measure of your economy is when your average American citizens are willing to uh, dehumanize one another and commit great acts of violence and kill one another for their next meal or something even more superficial. I mean, if it was really a food thing, you can almost understand, right? Wars come from famine. But we're not even killing each other over food. People are killing each other because they've just lost their fucking mind, number one, or they're killing each other to try and uphold some radical materialist image that we created as a culture. That's the real sign of your economy, not the fucking stock market. I don't want to talk to people about stocks. I don't give a shit if Apple stock is up or down or around in fucking circles. I love the scene in Wolf on Wall Street when Matthew McConaughey says, he says, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're Warren Buffett or you're Jimmy Buffett. Nobody knows. Nobody knows the stock market's going up, down, or in fucking circles, least of all stockbrokers. We don't know. It's just, and it's funny, but it's, that's the MSNBC punchline is look at the institutions, look at the experts and the people who have the credentials, look at the people who went to Wharton School of Business for financial analysis and economics, macroeconomics. Look to them. They'll tell you everything's going to be okay. And really all they're doing, in my opinion, is they're trying to bridge a gap with a bunch of bullshit to get us to the side where AI and technology can allow them a new iteration, a new chapter, a new level of slavery. That's what it really is. The slavery model and the drugs, piracy, slavery fell short, and we're in that gap.
Time for new technology.
If we can just get across.
That's very interesting because that brings to mind the British government outlawing slavery because they realized they could get more work out of the slaves by paying them a little money and giving them some perceived freedom in the new industrial revolution.
Yeah.
You're drawing out the same idea.
Yeah.
We're in a gap. The answer's coming. The people are going to close themselves up in prison all by themselves.
Oh, you just got to let it happen.
Our friend Tom just came back from jolly old England. He told me all the ATMs are gone. There's no ATMs. He went in to get some pounds at the British bank there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to use U.S. dollar because who knows what a pound is worth. He went to withdraw 200 pounds, let's call it dollars. They charged him $66 to get 200. Think that's a disincentive for cash? No ATMs. Everything's credit card. And if you want cash, it's going to cost you 25% VIG to go get it from the bank. They're ending cash in jolly old England. Going away. So I just want to say to all the listeners, they have that. They're just a step ahead of us. That's their plan here. So my solution is carry cash, quit that auto pay, quit that point and click pay, write checks, rip up all your credit cards, which by the way would be good for your finances. Have one emergency credit card, gum their system up. You're not breaking the law. Don't comply with their ongoing effort to disconnect you from the value of your work, which is what they're really trying to do.
What do you think about the Fed?
What do I think about the Fed?
I saw Rand Paul says it's time to audit the Fed. I like Rand. Rand's willing to stick his neck out there.
Audit it.
Yeah.
Audit it. These people, it's way beyond audit for me. They have $9 trillion.
Go ahead, keep going.
$9 trillion. The way our economy works, we owe $35 trillion. $35 trillion as the American people. And of that $35 trillion, how that works is our U.S. Treasury takes a piece of paper called a Treasury bond and sells that bond. And some institutional investor buys that bond, and the government pays that bondholder back with an interest rate. But there has to be demand for the bond. Sometimes they have what's called an auction where they're selling these bonds, and nobody shows up to buy the bonds. So guess what happens? The Fed The Fed, a privately owned institution, buys the bond by doing what? Creating money that never exists. There was no work, no profit, nothing real about it. They just make an entry on a computer screen and they say, hey, we're buying $1 trillion worth of bonds. Now they give that $1 trillion of fake money to the Treasury Department. The Treasury Department gives the Fed a piece of paper. So it's a paper on paper transaction, what we would call a bullshit transaction. But we, the American people, have got to pay back to the Fed that $9 or $10 trillion. That sounds to me like a con job, the long con. How can we pay back as the American people an indebtedness for which there was nothing ever real exchanged? There was no real exchange.
Right.
That's the Fed. That's the Fed. And they're telling us they're our friends. They're not our friends.
Why do you think there's only 12? I haven't been able to figure that out. What
12 regions?
What's the significance of there only being 12?
I don't know. I bet if we looked up the judicial districts and the Fed districts, they probably overlap quite nicely.
What I'm talking about? I'm gonna look it up right now.
Yeah, I mean, I've never studied that, but look up the judicial. How many judicial? I mean, there's got to be something to do with the law and the Fed working together in harmony to take care of the American people. In other words, bend over so they can service the account.
Yeah, but I mean, they're not even a government agency, right?
Well, they're a government regulated private corporation, and if there was people of sacred honor in the Congress who actually were interested in regulating the Fed, and the Fed governors were chosen by people of sacred honor, it wouldn't necessarily have to be the enslaving mechanism that it's come to be.
Yeah, there are 12 districts. You're right.
12. There's 12 judicial districts?
Federal Reserve districts.
Okay, 12 Federal Reserve districts.
It looks like Minnesota has the upper half of Wisconsin and Michigan, the western part of Michigan, the Dakotas and Montana. The one in Nevada has Idaho. You know, it's regional.
But they have regulatory powers over the local banks. So they're kind of the watchdog of the banking system. In other words, they're the wholesalers. And they got a bunch of retail outlets out there, and they want to make sure everything's going down smooth. It's kind of embarrassing when banks close up and people lose their money. So they're supposed to watch all this. They regulate it. They have people that investigate. But of course, the activities of the Fed are relatively occult. They're occult. They're behind a veil.
Mm-hmm.
We could spend many weeks studying that and just bring back our findings to the listeners and viewers because they have a lot of occult power.
I just ran The Creature from Jekyll Island last night.
You've run it many times.
Again, I just keep running it. I love it. I don't think there's a more thorough explanation of such a large, corrupt institution that I've ever come across. Except Muammar Gaddafi just putting the entire United Nations and Security Council on trial. 2 speeches of maybe I'll run that tomorrow. Special Saturday episode. The United Nations and the Federal Reserve, 2 institutions that are just about as corrupt as you could possibly imagine, honestly. And we serve under both of them.
And all those people in the United Nations all have PhDs.
Oh yeah.
They all went to our most elite institutions. All those professors are on the payroll. They're all the shock troops of the Democrat liberal order.
What would your prescription be for AI? I say we need to stop that shit right now. We need to rein the AI in.
Man, I just had a conversation around my home fire. We're growing our own food. I mean, the way to defeat tyranny is just don't participate. I mean, if I'm growing my own food, and I'm not a farmer by birth. And Mrs. Professor Penn said, "You really aren't going to do that, are you?" I said, "No, I'm going to do it like a religion because my life depends on it." And if every American citizen just said, "I'm going to grow some food,
cucumbers, tomatoes,
whatever you like," and we start to disengage from our dependency on the system's just standing out there with nobody dependent on it. It'll just collapse. And I think it's getting down to that now. I mean, I'm thinking, what's the back game on this thing? How do we take something that won and created massive citizen dependency and defeat it? Because we're all dependent on this system. Well, we start to lessen our dependency. Carry cash. Get rid of them credit cards. Stop pointing and clicking to pay shit. Start growing your own food. Reel in your ambitions from a material perspective. Give space for a spiritual life to grow. I'm that way. And I've been that way my whole life. But, I had some advantages because I came from some pipe-hitting faithful people. But it's just reached a level of ridiculousness of how. Well, I'm watching on Morning Joe, right? And here's what they're saying. These Trump people, the people that really support Trump, they make less than $50,000 a year. So here's the implication. If you don't make a lot of money, you're stupid. That's what they're saying. And I'm thinking to myself, man, I don't make a lot of money. I'm not stupid. The equating of financial prowess with intellectual capability is one of the biggest scams that has ever been perpetrated by the conservative movement on America.
Mm.
That's a conservative thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I get a lot of money, I won the game. Let me bend the system so I get even more money because I want to win. And that's what we got, like right in my Senate district, ST 45. I mean, I live on the poor side of town. You go over on the rich side of town, oh, it's rich. And those people suck. And they hate me because what they have is the money in the bank. They're sitting there looking at their phones every day, counting up their cash, looking at their apps. Look at me. I'm so smart. I got all this money. They got digits on a computer screen. And these people think look at me. I'm worth $5 million on my computer screen. Going back to that Wolf of Wall Street, try to get that shit out of there.
And especially if we go the way England's going.
Can't get it out.
Which we will, because we're so cucked for the crown in England.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Imagine what would you have to pay to get $5 million out in cash?
According to that, it cost you $1 million and a half. And that's before you get to the taxes.
We'll give you 4.
It's a negotiation.
We'll give you 4.
I mean, this is ridiculous what's going on.
Yeah.
These people looking at their screens thinking they got something. This bubble, the reason that it's not collapsed is because a majority of the people still think it's real. We could trigger a collapse. All we got to do is start whispering to each other, this thing's a scam.
Yeah.
And when enough people think it's a scam, I'll tell you, I don't know, when Johnny Carson.
Bank runs.
Do you know who Johnny Carson was?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Remember I told you that the Ayatollah was watching Johnny Carson reruns.
That's correct. Okay, Johnny Carson, and I don't remember when he did this or even what the context was, but he made some kind of comment that toilet paper was going short in the store, and there was a run on toilet paper, and you had to wipe your ass with your hand. It was a problem because when people start talking and when they figure out the implications, let me just put this into something that people can understand. If you take $1 million of $100 bills and you stack them, $100 bill on top, it's about as tall as you and me. If you take
it's about as tall as a chair.
About as tall as
table
a chair.
Yeah.
Right, that's right. If you take $1 billion, it's like the tallest building in your city.
Sears Tower, Chicago.
Right. You take $1 trillion, it's 653 miles into space. It's taller than the space station.
Right.
That's $1 trillion. We're $35 trillion. You go to Mars and back with the debt. And they keep expanding it by $1 trillion every 100 days. Thank you, Tom Emmer. Nice job. There's a reckoning coming here. I think your friend, Alex, his theory of the case is the war is a cover story for the coming bankruptcy. Blame it on Putin. I thought we blamed stuff on the Jews. Now we're blaming it on the Russians. What happened?
Blame it on whoever we need to.
Right. We're going to find a scapegoat called a scapegoat.
I got a question for you. Extinction level event. That's one of the, if you believe in the cataclysmic potential of nuclear weapons, there are much more probable extinction level causing events that could happen, like meteorites, plague, things maybe extraterrestrial attack.
How about just falling birth rates?
Okay,
How about the collapse of
probably would be
society?
slow. I'm talking about quick.
Quick?
Okay,
Meteor.
meteor, right? Tons of them out there, not tracking the sky for all of NASA's prestige
Yeah,
and
they show
credentials.
up and they go, oh, look at that.
Oh,
How'd you miss
where'd that
that?
come from?
What is that?
Ooh, that was a close one. That one was just about 100 miles off of ending the species as we know it. I asked a question the other day if some of these doomsday scenarios and strategies, contingency plans, like going to live on Mars, going to live on the moon, space habitats, things like that, interstellar travel, intergalactic, civilizations, stuff like that. Why nobody ever talks about creating underground uh, contingencies
Because
for?
it's there, just not for you and me.
Ah, yeah, okay, touche.
Very, very well developed.
Underground,
Dr. Strangelove.
Doctor
It's
Strangelove.
the greatest thing ever.
No, but I mean, what I'm saying is, isn't that a much better contingency plan than trying to go live live on Mars?
Particularly when to repopulate the Earth, there has to be 10 women for every man. According
I'm
to
just
Dr.
saying. I
Strangelove.
just think in my mind, I'm thinking all of this propaganda around,
Diversion.
Operation Star Travel, right? Operation, find the furthest star to inhabit. Where's the life in the universe? The Earth has survived so many things from this mainstream scientific narrative's own point of view, from their own historical analysis and what survived so many things that people, animals were extinct, but the Earth is fine. We could pretty much survive any type of habitat, any
When you
type of
say
environment.
we, who you mean we?
I'm saying the human beings at this point with the technology we have, why are we investing in artificial intelligence before we fortify? It's like the power grid here in America. Why are we worried about defending the Ukraine before we fortify our own power grid? Why are we worried about going to? Why are we giving SpaceX all this money to leave Earth's atmosphere and go find a chart a path, a chart a course to Mars before we build underground habitats that could survive a meteor strike? Because really, a meteor strike only. I mean, there's going to be a blast radius right there on the surface. That motherfucker's going to be a big crater, no doubt.
A lot of dust.
A lot of dust, a lot of fire, a lot of tidal waves. Okay. You could easily create underground structures and habitats that are waterproof, sealed, and oxygenated, and have fresh water and food. You could terraform underneath the earth. We have the potential. We have the capacity to terraform now.
Yeah, I think they got it. I don't think they're telling us about it.
Oh,
I
okay.
think the reason there's all this.
So you mean this whole globalist scam of climate science and the new frontier of space is really bullshit?
Well, I don't say it's bullshit. I think they're going to strike out in as many directions as they can. But if the shit hits the fan, they got this stuff already set up. We know it. I mean, it's in the public record.
Bunkers,
Bunkers, huge bunkers under
huge
mountains.
cities,
Right.
bunker cities,
That's correct.
and they're going to lock you in the FEMA camps, martial law.
Well, they're just going to let us sit in the surface and kill each other, and they're going to be kicking it under the mountain there. And, if you're in the Congress, you're in on it. Because we're going to have to preserve the most important elements of society. I got to go watch Dr. Strangelove tonight because it's all laid out right there. Dr. Strangelove lays it out beautifully. Aren't people going to feel bad about leaving all their loved ones?
What was that
behind?
movie? I forgot which movie it was, but they were trying to get on the ship. I think maybe it was The Day After Tomorrow. Maybe it was another movie. I'm forget which one, but they were looking at the ship on the space, and they were the space on the ship, and they were like, well, we only can afford hold so many people. It's like, look at those rooms. You got space for another 10 people in there, but everybody had to have their space. And it made me think of when we went to that SD convention, and I stood up and spoke over there at the country club. It was at that country club.
Oh, the country club.
Before I went up to speak, all I could think about was looking down at the floor and still seeing those 6-foot radius markers. 6 feet, stay 6 feet from each other. They're still laying there. They're still laying there at the country club.
Waiting.
What the fuck are we doing? I mean, the 6 feet thing was complete pseudoscience. Dr. Fauci got up there and admitted it. Are they going to start pulling those? They can't even do it now. Some of these places are so sucking the government's asshole. They can't. They actually built permanent signs in their buildings, in their schools.
We have them in this building, in the stairwells.
No.
Yeah, go. You'll see when you walk out. You're just not noticing it. They have it in the stairwells here.
I mean, that's dark. That's scary. That's a psyop right there.
I saw a very prominent scientist say, I mean, really a well-known virologist say that there's about to be another devastating wave of COVID that's going to affect the society at a very profound level.
50%.
So they're not done with this thing yet.
Of course.
You know?
I think this whole, well, yeah. And I mean, how are you going to lock down illegal immigrants?
How are you going to lock down illegal immigrants?
I mean, if we have such a dangerous biological viral pandemic out there, or the potential for another one, how are you gonna lock down illegal immigrants?
How are you going to pay for them when they show up at the hospitals?
That's another good question.
Well, that would be the Cloward and Piven method of bringing down the system. See, there's all this thing about we're bringing in all these illegal voters or potential illegal voters, which I can just say in Minnesota, when you get your driver's license in Minnesota, the first 3 bills, because the Republican Conservative Party lost control here in Minnesota, because their message was, we want to be just like the Democrats, which, of course, if you can't tell the difference, you can't tell the difference.
Right.
So the Republican Party lost all control here in Minnesota in the last cycle, and we have an all-Democrat governor and House and Senate. And the first 3 bills they passed, the first bill, of course, was abortion up till the moment of birth is now the law of Minnesota. It used to be called infanticide. Now it's called women's health care. Okay, that's cool. Change. Second bill, when I get my driver's license, I'm automatically registered to vote. Third bill, illegal immigrants, or as they say, newcomers, get Minnesota driver's licenses. So how are you ever going to sort this out when 3-4 million people vote? And of course, the answer is you can't sort it out. But that's what we're focused on.
Right.
There's a whole other deal going on here, which is these people are going to go to school. They're going to get health care. They're going to get college educated. I mean, the money that's going to go into taking care of these folks is going to get borrowed, and the inflation is going to continue because we're going to continue to deficit spend. And here's what the economists say, our PhD economists. This is going to expand the economy. This is going to give so much more economic activity. Well, this is so good.
The VIG, the interest.
It's all going to be good because we have all these new consumers. Actually, what we also have is a new class of slave laborers who, since they're not citizens, the workaround's going to be, hey, you know what? We're going to give you a card. You can stay. You just got to work for $7-8 an hour.
Oh, that was Joanne Reed's story. They're doing all these jobs. Remember when the 6, I think there were 6 migrant workers were working on that bridge.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And Joanne Reed said, they're doing all these jobs that ordinary Americans don't want to do. No, they don't want to get paid shit money for hazardous work. That's what.
Well, it really wasn't that hazardous, except for that night it was hazardous. I mean, filling in potholes on bridges would not normally be seen as you're putting your life on the line.
Hey, people drive, texting and driving, getting drunk, drinking and driving, texting and driving.
And you know what? My father, when I was a little kid who was teaching at the University of Minnesota, that was before the government got involved in the universities. He was making like, in their 60s, making like $5,000-6,000 a year. So to feed us, he was working for the city doing potholes. PhD. Okay. It was okay. I'm just saying, he was willing to do that, so I had shoes. Okay? There's nothing embarrassing or wrong about that.
Right.
So, am I willing to do it? Yes, I am. If I have to, I don't mind. Where did that spirit go?
Yeah, but not only that, but what's this whole narrative that American citizens aren't willing to do it? I mean, I don't even buy
Are
that.
they?
I, I mean, if they aren't, it's the the establishment's desire. It was their design. They were in charge of the schools. If you educate people not to understand the value in a hard day's work, then that's a reflection of you, Joyanne Reed.
You know, in
That's a
China,
reflection of Cuck Joe and the entire establishment.
in China, there's no social programs. There's a lot of guys standing around parking cars and picking up cigarettes.
Mhm.
You want to get some money from the government, you got to do something. I mean, it's just the way it is.
Mm.
So this is a cultural thing. And what you just said is true. It's what we believe as a people.
Right.
You know, I've never worked harder in my life just to not go out. But that's what's required of me. I mean, I that's the value that I have being a child of the 50s and 60s. You know, you do whatever it takes. You know, good times come, great. Bad times come, great. Whatever comes, I got to take care of what I got to take care of. That's just my attitude. I wouldn't ask anybody for help, but that's been modified. In fact, I'm sure they'd have very ugly things to say about me. I'm probably a white supremacist because I think that way. I have advantages. I'm going to tell you, if I got an advantage, I'd sure like to see it show up
Mm-hmm.
because 8% interest, put your ass in the dirt, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, these are the things that were changed by removing spiritual borders. You know, spiritual border, you know, self-sufficiency. Well, you know, this is another thing. You didn't get this growing up. Maybe you did. You know, we grew up in the 60s, 50s, and 60s.
Mm.
We were watching Westerns.
Yeah.
I mean, these cowboys were out. They didn't have a house. They lived on the wide open range. You know what? That was how they lived. They lived in harmony with nature. They farmed. They were self-sufficient. They were self-governing. In other words, if you stepped on my blue suede shoes, I'm drawing my 6 gun, and we're going to find out how this turns out. And that was how we were raised. And then somebody said, oh, well, that's toxic. We don't want to be like that. We want to be some other way.
Yeah.
And it changed.
Like 310 to Yuma. How great is that movie?
Right. That exactly. The original or the remake?
The remake was great.
The
With
remake
Christian
was,
Bale and Russell Crowe.
it was great, wasn't it?
Incredible movie.
But the original one was pretty damn good too.
yeah. Okay.
So black and white, man.
Yeah.
You know, I got people that tell me they won't watch black and white movies because they don't want to watch black and white movie. Like it's not enough.
Casablanca?
It's not enough stimulation to their brain because there's no flashing lights and colors, and the character development bores them.
Hmm.
I mean, this is not infrequent for me to hear that from people. I love a good black and white movie. You've watched Casablanca?
Love Casablanca.
Is that not everybody in the audience?
Humphrey Bogart.
Here's a self-inventory moment. Do you know what Casablanca is? Have you watched it? And if you haven't watched it, could we give you a gift? Go watch Casablanca.
Yeah.
Go watch it. Go watch it. Look at all the values. You know, Casablanca, I did a whole podcast on it, which I couldn't get up on YouTube because YouTube said, stop. You know, it was a story of a man, Rick Blaine, who, for reasons unbeknownst, lost his sacred honor and everything. Well, then we find out what the reason is. His heart was broken by Elsa. So right off the bat, we're down a strange trail. His heart, he had fought in the Spanish War. He was a fighter, and he fell in love with this beautiful woman. His heart was broken. She abandoned him, and he became completely materialist. He was an alcoholic, a chain smoker, and he ran a casino. It was all about him, all about money, and then through a series of events, he reclaimed his sacred honor. It was the whole story of a man going through the darkness of night and emerging back into faith and sacred honor. You know, it's like The Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz, which has been reversed because there's a Broadway play now where they turn the thing around and reverse the whole deal. But
I don't know about that.
No, there's a great play where they reverse a very beautiful idea. You need courage, you need heart, and you need intelligence to become a Jedi Master. That's what it was about, to become a real person. So we had these broken down, like mind, body, and spirit. The lion was looking for courage, the scarecrow was looking for brains, and the Tin Man needed a heart. And it was a story of how they acquired those things. And that was a parable that all of us watched. It was great. It was beautiful. It's how we learned how to be human beings. Now, what are you watching these days? What's
The Real Housewives of Orange County.
Never watched it. Can you tell me what it's about?
I couldn't tell you what it's about, but I see people watching the shit. Basketball Wives, Love and Hip Hop, 16 and Pregnant, 16 and Pregnant Part 17, Season 24. Always can make good money off of a unexpected teenage pregnancy and the pitfalls and perils of it. I mean, it's out of control. I mean, I don't even know. There's nothing on live television anymore except reality TV and sports. That's it. They can't even sell. Cable's, I don't even know how cable's still surviving. They've transitioned to Wi-Fi service and, they provide Wi-Fi, but I don't even know how cable television is surviving. And the cable box, I mean, when I got rid of cable, the cable boxes were ridiculous. The cable price was out of control. I watch fucking cable. Fuck that. I mean, we'll just get an app, and if the NBA games don't come on this particular app, and there's no way to access it through this app, don't need to watch it. That's just the way it is. But there's nothing on live television anymore. I mean, the nightly shows, maybe. The Jimmy Fallons and the Oliver was Oliver Stewart. No, it's Oliver. What's his guy's name?
I don't watch him. I don't.
John
know.
Oliver.
John Oliver.
Yeah,
okay.
John Oliver and Stephen Colbert. You got the nighttime shows, you got the reality TV shows, and you got live sports.
That's why I think there's such an effort being made to get control of this internet.
Mm-hmm.
There's just so much, and I want to thank everybody that's listening and viewing. We get such great feedback about Hebrews.
Mm.
And, we're not really fronting. I mean, this is you and me just sitting around.
Yeah.
We don't even get a chance to go out anymore. I keep saying this.
We're going to dinner right after this.
Are we?
Yes, we are.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
But my point is, there's so much free exchange of information going on. It's such a threat to the narrative. Just like me saying to everybody, please go watch my new favorite supervillain, the president of Belarus, threaten the entire world with a world war.
Mm.
Just watch him. It's great. It's gripping reality. It's real reality television. Real.
Yeah.
And we have that opportunity now as American citizens to get all this information. What are we doing? Well, our audience is doing it.
Yeah.
Our audience is watching a ton of different sources and people and forming an opinion of all their own.
It's growing too. If you can see it from these Senate district conventions that we're visiting, where I get up and speak, even from 2 years ago when I was
the
there,
change is incredible.
It's incredible. It's coming.
And
coming.
I think we've worked really hard in Minnesota to create a new politics.
I got black kids showing up at the Federal Reserve, trying to go in, and I say this to end. It's so funny that we no borders, no walls on our country. Try walking into the Federal Reserve.
Oh, that won't work.
Try walking into the White House. They got borders. They got boundaries.
They got gates.
They got gates.
Walls.
They got guns.
They got lots of guns.
Rules for thee and not for me.
Right.
That's the globalist modus operandi.
Yeah, they get all the good, juicy ribeye steak, and I'm supposed to eat the bugs? Nah.
No.
Not going to go that way.
No.
My body doesn't work on bugs.
1776. No, I'm kidding. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being here again, Professor Penn. We appreciate it. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Hebrews. We appreciate your listenership and viewership today and in the future. Thanks to the War Room Posse, the crew over there at War Room, Grace Chong, Maureen Bannon, the great Steve Bannon. Tune in tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern, Real America's Voice for the Royce White Show. I got a screenshot from one of my friends the other day, and he was watching Real America's Voice on the Roku on TV, and he had the TV guide up, and on the TV guide it said the Royce White Show. It's the first time I've ever seen that.
Cool.
So that was cool, and we appreciate the feedback from the Royce White Show. John Fredericks Radio Network, Monday through Friday, 9 p.m. Eastern. You can listen to the Royce White Radio Show. Professor Penn, the Professor Penn Podcast, Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7:30 p.m. Central Time on YouTube and Rumble. You can also listen to and download his podcast from the major audio platforms, mine as well. Thanks for being here again this evening. We appreciate it. The fight continues.
Be well over the weekend.
Yep. Be well. Godspeed to you. We'll see you again next week.